When politicians talk like this, Sister Rosling, it's very interesting.
Oh, it is.
The point is that when you're in office, sometimes the mindset is different. So perhaps maybe it's the culture, is the way.
It's the way things have become now. We have so monetarized politics that everybody thinks that everything has to do with money. If you don't have money, you don't go into politics. If you go into politics, you must make money. That is where the problem is. The problem is that if you say that you're going to govern a people, you want to serve them, then you must serve them. But when you come and you amass so much, look, we are in this country when somebody says, if you have money, then you can control people. That statement alone tells you the mindset of the kind of leaders that we are having now. That you must have the money to control people. But that is not the issue. You're supposed to go there and serve the people, make life better for them, make life easier for them. That's why they voted for you. But if every time you bring out policies that do not better their lots, that makes them at the end of the day look at 5 cities and think it's 50 cities. They're so impoverished. When you give them 5 cities, they're ready to do anything. Look, when you go on campaign, you meet people and they tell you, Madam, if you give me 5 cities, we'll vote. And we tell them, we are not giving you money. Because if we are coming to serve you, we want you to look at us, look at the situation on the ground, and vote for CPP.
Well,
I think you're the most sincerest party I can find around, right?
Sure.
Yes.
But it's also because you haven't been in government.
No, we have been in government. We took this country to independence.
I know that.
Let me be quick to add this, Roland.
So we have.
If we have a leadership that thinks of the people and comes with social interventions, as in pro-poor policies, like health insurance today, where my old lady sitting in
we've heard all this stuff.
No, I'm just saying, I know. These are the examples that
especially
we
you
can
are a Nasara coordinator.
Yes.
And we know that in many of these Zongo communities,
yes,
we have a lot of depravity.
Absolutely.
And I've lived close to the Zongos
Very
before.
well.
They're not only occupied by people of any Northern or Muslim extraction. They're also occupied by all forms of people, people from different parts or backgrounds.
Of Africa,
okay.
I know.
Right. So you find that the variables that characterize the Zongo communities are the same. Poor education, literacy levels are high, unemployment, teenage pregnancy, etc. But nothing is done about it. And it's the same
Something
thing.
is done. And that is why I cited this, and you said you've heard all this. And I tell you, when we start getting pro-poor policies well pushed to them, my heart saddens when I think of Sada as a Northerner. There wasn't a Southerner who was brought to come and handle the affairs of Sada in the North. No. My own brothers were put in place. My own brothers.
But should
we never thought of.
Yes. I have a difficulty when we reduce the argument to a regional affair. The point is that any Ghanaian is a Ghanaian, and any Ghanaian is a human being.
Well, I don't see why
and any human being is prone to either, well, all these vices that we talk about, or we tend to think about when whoever is a public officer.
Yes, you just told me that you live close to the Zongos.
I've lived
close to the Zongos, and of course you appreciate more the affairs and the happenings in the Zongos. Just like take someone who has lived more in say a bourgeois area, I mean that be. Bring the person to come and manage the affairs of Zongo all of a sudden. He's going to fail. He really doesn't understand. No, trust me. Sometimes he may not, unless otherwise he's a type who is committed to his job and wants to listen. If you don't do more listening, but you wouldn't have first-hand information as to what is happening there. The variables that you mentioned, he may not know them. So when you talk
then
of
Sada, we don't need to have that he's becoming president.
No, we do. I'm just trying to make, when we talk of Sada, I am trying to say that I'm not trying to make
the point. You need to care for people
or ethnocentrism
to work for them and care for their needs. But before you can do all that, you need to win political office. One of the foremost, or the foremost organization that takes care of elections in Ghana is Electoral Commission. Now, the chairman of the commission has appeared before Parliament. The political parties in Ghana expressed concerns about the constitutional instrument 75. And we all know the concerns we went through when I had to go to from 71, 74, and all the 73. Prior to 2012. Now, there have been concerns about that very constitutional instrument and the tenets, and especially when the election was being convened, the issue about the biometric registration and whether there was verification at the point of voting, and the difficulties we had. Him appearing before Parliament, how significant is it?
Well, very significant. Parliament, of course, is the body that makes laws in this country. We are told by our constitution that before you make a law, you are given a mandate by this constitution to make any law, you ought to lay it before Parliament, okay, for it to be looked at, every gazetted even, until later on it goes on to be debated on and see if the law should be passed on it or not. So it's essential for him to appear before Parliament. That's one. Two, I want us to look at the subject matter itself. The CI-75 that Afarajan is seeking to get portions of it or some parts of it amended. You know, the particular portion which has to do with verification, no vote issue, which of course when we went to the Supreme Court we all heard him. That is what he's actually hammering on now. And I think that...
But it's also because the parties are raising it.
Come again? The parties are raising it. You see, when you read the story very well, unless otherwise I didn't get it right, I stand to be corrected. He says that he's yet to even go and meet inter-party, you know, advisory committee to iron out some of the issues or even contain the CI-75. Then in the same vein, he rushes to Parliament to say, I want to lay this paper before you. Now, which one are you discussing with them? Which one have you laid before Parliament? That's why I stand to be corrected anyway. So let us ensure that, yes, the right thing is done. First and foremost, it's a process. You ought to get things right before you even get to Parliament. Have you met with the inter-party, the advisory committee? Have you discussed? Have they all discussed the modalities, portions they wanted amended and all that? Now you agreed, you reached a consensus, you've got into Parliament, you've met with the Committee of Parliament on Elections. Okay, you've discussed with them before you come to the floor of Parliament to say, I am laying this paper now, and then it ought to be gazetted for 21 days before the law is passed. all this thing must be done very well.
Well, example, I have to catch you on the break there, because he's not saying he's going to lay. What happened was that he was called by Parliament.
He was called, so he had to present something.
And then and the parliamentarians had concerns, and though they asked him, they interacted with him, and he says that, well, if you have these concerns, for which we also have noticed,
very well,
then this is the right way to go. We have to do an amendment. But coming out of the election petition, what were, as parties, some of the things that you noticed were anomalies within Ghana's electoral system that, look, the commission really needs to sit up on?
I think that from the very onset, the biometric machines were a problem.
Even during the election process?
Yes, even during the election process itself. In the first instance, I think they were not tropicalized, and therefore, whenever there was high temperatures, they went dead, you know. And there were so many other issues to do with the biometric registration. I happened to go to the art center to check, you know, even though they were saying that one couldn't register twice, I saw double registrations and stuff, and we took up case with the staff. But when you look at all these things, so many things were not right. We did not get the voters list on time. It is important for a political party to get the voters list on time. That enables you to go around at least to check and verify and make sure that such a name, such a place does exist. For instance, I'll say that in Boku, for instance, there were people who had registered with numbers, house numbers, and those houses didn't exist. Somebody just carved out a nice, neat name, knowing very well that nobody's going to go and check, and just brought it. And if you go to P/25, so and so, and give a name. All these things will have to be looked at, how we will be able to get the voters list on time to enable us go around and check. Also, I think that the EC will have to be given more resources, if possible, to be able to train our polling agents. We train them ourselves, but the EC also trains them. And sometimes they don't get any training at all. It's just like in and out. You know, you have to actually let the persons understand. I'm sure if they understood the importance of a polling agent, the importance of a presiding member signing a document, and all those things, a lot of these things would not have happened. So I would want for the EC and the political parties as IPAC to sit down and look at all the recommendations that were given by the Supreme Court judges, so that we can at least minimize any such...
a lot of recommendations were made by the Supreme Court, and I believe that at Inter-Party Advisory Committee, a lot of proposals and recommendations will also come from the parties. Okay, I believe a broader consultation must be carried out by the EC to find out what they can do on this register now, as it stands now. Ghana, with about 26 million population, or less, I don't know, okay, has about 57% voter population. It's strange. It's strange. You have countries like South Africa who have far less voter population percentage. Okay, and I asked myself, per the census that we had, indeed how many people are qualified to register as voters in this country. Now we have about 14 million people out of 26 already on the voter register, we are told, which is very problematic.
Nearly 26.
Very
we
well.
haven't gotten to the point.
Nearly. Well, which is very problematic. You have not even addressed that, because after the Supreme Court, we are told that you ought to address this duplication of registration or double registration issues that Madam has spoken about. Have we done that? Have we cleansed the register that we have? Now you are struggling. I think, if not, but for the intervention of the parties and all that, we would have had another registration on the 20th of June.
We would have had open registration, limited
registration, 20th of June. To add more to already what we have that is questionable.
So auditing of the voter register is critical.
Again, there's this law, CI 72, where we have some requirements that a voter must meet before being registered as a voter. And it includes the NHIS card.
You mean
what you need to present to show that you are indeed a citizen of Ghana. Today we have non-citizens who have NHIS card. Because at the point of collection, you don't need
specifically that once you're a resident in Ghana,
absolutely,
you can have access.
So you don't even need birth certificate to prove that. Okay, now somebody goes to have NHIS card, and that person can register to be a voter in this country. As to whether or not he's really a true citizen, we don't know. So all these things are flaws. I was thinking EC should rather accompany itself with the 72, CI 72, in addition to CI 75, to seek amendment of those tests. Otherwise, we politicians, you know what we can do. You understand
what
me?
Can you
do? A lot.
They politicians.
We, all of us. I think Madam is part of it.
No,
so I think that
we don't do that.
In as much as we are yearning to have credible in as much as we are yearning to have credible elections going forward, the EC must set up. The EC must ensure that some laws that are questionable should actually be looked at very well by Parliament. Then, of course, we'll go forward. Otherwise, we'll always have go back and forth on these matters in future.
Well, Rosalind, one of the main features which became a bone of contention for the political parties, I mean, all of you, and as well as even the other stakeholders like the media and civil society, was the subject of no verification, no vote, for which we had a lot of disagreement in many sections of the country. Now, particularly when some also understood it in the strictest of the sense and in the interpretation of the law, that, well, once the machine didn't verify you or pick your various biometric coordinates, then you will not be in a position to vote. Now, at that point, then we also need to have discussions around it. Well, somebody may be in the voters register. Visibly, you can see in the register the person is, but the person doesn't get to have the machine verifying the person's biometric features. So, do we say then the person doesn't need to vote? There were some instances where I remember some electoral commission officials there, is it presiding officers we call them, allow some to vote before they were stopped by the political parties. What consensus should we draw?
You know, when we said biometric, we didn't go just with the thumb. We went with a full 5 fingers. Yeah, on one. Which means if this is not working, this should be working, that should work, and all that. I guess if you try all these and it doesn't, then that will be a problem. But for me, I was having that discussion with Kamal, and I said, look, we don't want to disenfranchise anyone, because I know of people, farmers, people who work very hard with their hands. Sometimes it's so rough that you can hardly actually get them to be verified. So would you say that such a person should not vote? If we look at our brothers and sisters, the lepers, maybe there's a certain format for them to be able to cast their votes. We realize that there are so many other people who just don't have it. Even in the developed world, in the developed countries, there are some people who do not have it. So would we say that those people should not vote? All that we need to do is to come out clearly and understand, all political parties, what the no verification really means. Is it just the thumb printing or any other, like facial or other fingers or other forms? Because we can't just say that because your thumbprint is not picked, you can't vote. That, for me, I believe we will disenfranchise a lot of people. That's what I think.
Well, how do we get to the point, Abdullahi, where these disagreements, especially that comes or occurs among all the parties, it depends on who the person is, and then at which point in time the person is having that very encounter, that these agreements come up. That will make sure that despite all the difficulties we have and the interpretation we have with the law, which says that if you're not verified, you don't vote. And you need to be verified biometrically. Now, the Electoral Commission says that if you're having these difficulties, and you as politicians or political party members, you have pointed them out, then we need serious amendments. Then how does it give credence to the fact that we're having a very biometric system for voting?
Well, my prima facie position will be that the law is a law.
And it needs to be interpreted
absolutely as such. That is why they say judges are partial to the law and impartial to the parties. Now, if the law says XYZ ought to be done, XYZ ought to be done, especially when it comes to establishing the credibility of the election process. Whether the Odukro can vote or Odukro cannot vote depends on the law. So when we went for 2012 general elections, or went into the election, the aftermath saw us in court. The ones who superintended over the election came to say that at a point in time, if I know XYZ, once he lives here and order and somebody can prove that he's here, we should go past the law and let the person vote. I disagree with that one. That one, I think I'm not in agreement with it. Again, I would like to ask this question. Is it enough for someone to say that I have gone to steal this newspaper? The law frowns on stealing. Then you come to say that no, possibly because he's hungry, he cannot get food to eat, we may allow him to steal just a newspaper. Then you ought not to have the law in place. So for me, we should all look at it like Madame said, get everybody on board, ensure that we all agree on a common position. What is that common position? Then going forward, we would work with that common position. However, if we have the laws and someone sits down again to say that no, I know the law is there, but then I would like to bypass the law, and then because this man is the Odikru here or the chief here, then let me allow him to vote because we all know him.
Then it brings disagreement.
It brings disagreement. So it's a problem. Madam made a very salient point, a very cogent argument, that we were biometrically examined by all these fingers. What happened? If this one doesn't work, can that one work? Can this one work? Now, questions were being asked as to what machines or equipment were used. And the answers were that, no, I'm not a technician, so I can't even tell. This is bad. If you have been asked to superintend over an election, and you are in fact the electoral commissioner, you ought to know everything about the election. The company that is going to be in charge of those machines, you are the one going to hire them. Okay, now having hired them, they have proven to you beyond reasonable doubt that they can do the work and they'll bring better equipment. You ought to look at this equipment very well, test it before you get there. So I think that some of these things must be looked at practically, and not only the laws and what happens in the Electoral Commission.
I just want to say that all these things that we're saying, there's that big question: who is a Ghanaian? You see, when you get to the polls, everyone is coming to vote, and sometimes you have someone say you're not a Ghanaian. That is the reason why, yes, that's the reason why we are talking about,
especially in the border areas.
Especially in the border areas. And you know, I've had a cause to kind of like ask myself what's happening. You find these Gawo boys who carry these things.
Or somebody who's a Fulani, for example.
And they just come and then they don't speak any Ghanaian language, and they have a voter's ID.
NHIS, that's what they use.
They have a voter's ID. I have come across so many of them because I engage them in conversation. I try to lure them to my party or something, and I said, and you know, that kind of thing. I said, are you this? Are you so? I'm a Ghanaian. And I said, how are you a Ghanaian? So he says, I have a voter ID. Then they remove it, and you look at it, and you ask yourself, I ask you, when did you come? Oh, I've been here a year, 2 years. Where are you staying? In a big compound with other people.
And that doesn't qualify the person.
And that doesn't qualify the person.
But we could have somebody who is a Ghanaian and doesn't speak, you know, the local languages.
Oh, no, that's one. I think that we can have them.
Yeah.
But then you see, I keep saying that...
it shouldn't be widespread.
It shouldn't be widespread. And the other thing is, when you tell me that you're a Ghanaian and you're walking the streets, and I ask you, what primary school did you go to? I would need for you to tell me, what secondary school did you go to? You understand? What university? Unless you are trained abroad. But what I'm trying to say is that those ordinary people on the streets, a lot of them will tell you that, look, I was born here, and you realize that it's not true.
Well, Rosalind, the next question I wanted to ask, and Abdullah was alluding to it early on, about is issues of procurement.
Yes.
Prior to 2012, and I remember we did extensive coverage on the subject because the parties were having difficulties with it. The EC was not letting them on the subject of, well, which companies they were perhaps involving in the whole tender, which of them were part of the competitive building, which of them were they considering. When does it become the responsibility of the business of the parties? When we already have an established organization like the Electoral Commission, and because the political parties feel they are stakeholders, they also need to be part of the workings or administrative procedures of the Electoral Commission. Where does it happen? You didn't get my question.
I understand it, Roland. Everything has to be transparent.
Very well.
What transparency means?
What transparency means?
I am the Electoral Commission.
You can't be.
I've been empowered by a law in Ghana that states that I have the responsibility to procure this and these machines. Where does it become your business how I procure the machines and who I procure the machines from? Your business is the machines are ready, and I've informed you the machines are ready.
I have to believe in the machines. I have to trust the machines. It is my business for you to tell me where you are getting the machines. Even to give me the prototype. Let me have a look at it. Examine the machines. Yes, I should be able to examine the machine to make sure that it's working as you say it's going to work. I don't see why people can't be transparent in this country, and that is what is costing us. Because there's so much, you know, done under the table that somehow we don't get the right things. If you're going to import cars for the state, lay it bare. We are importing these cars.
Because these are
it is taxpayers' money. We need transparency. Everything must be in the open. Why hide anything? Tell us, it's costing us 20,000 Ghana cedis. Fine. This is what it contains. Leather seats, this, that. Let us all be happy with it. But don't come and put it under the table somewhere and later come and tell us $60,000.
Roland, the procurement laws in this country even espouses transparency strongly. It tells you open tender. Okay, you do that, people bid. And
well, we know that. All those will be done transparently
now, again,
in the full glare of the public.
Very well.
The point is, when does it become the responsibility of the parties who would want to know every step that the Electoral Commission
There's
takes?
a criteria.
Is it because there's some level of suspicion against the Electoral Commission?
No. I think you are running an institution which ought to be independent in the first place. Let's know that.
And so how independent you are?
And how independent you are?
Is a business of the stakeholders you work with?
Yes.
You know what? There's no law establishing interparty advisory committee. You know that? It is an innovation that EC have brought in just for the sake of involving all stakeholders. Is that not correct?
It's an innovation the EC has brought in due to excessive pressure by the parties.
Yes, the parties want it, and it's working for you now.
I would have even called for a law establishing interparty advisory committee. Honestly, I would have even called for it. Because, look, you are dealing with people who ought to see you very independent, very neutral. Okay? And of course, when you involve them, this complaints here and there, left, right, center, like Madame said, would not even come. So fine, why can't we just come out and be transparent whatever we're doing? If before you come out to open tender for a bid, you give us a criteria, what are the requirements you need from a company that is going to bid for it? That is open knowledge. Is that correct? Now, if I sit here and I have an interest in this matter, I would have to make sure that the companies that have actually bidded for this contract have met with all these criteria that or whatever requirements that you've put in place. And if that is not done, there will be a problem. STL, how are they taking? We don't even know that. So next time, going forward, we should try.
Which STL are you talking about? The estate company? The estates?
No. I mean the company that supplied the biometric machines and did a whole lot of things. So I think that
we have
there were a lot of issues. Yes, there were a lot of issues surrounding there.
Supposed to build the STL.
Very well.
So I thought
not STX, right?
That was X.
That was STX. This is STL.
I thought you were trying to be mischievous.
No, this one is STL.
But in going forward, the elections are up now. And I believe that I talked to a few of the politicians a few days ago, and they were worried that, well, we have only 2 more quarters for the close of 2014. And then we get into the last business of the year. The next year is an election business period, and nobody has any time for any of those difficulties they would encounter. And so the best time to correct is now. Yes. Do you also have the same feeling as political parties?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
We believe that if there's anything to be done, it should be now, before the end of the year.
Do you think that the Electoral Commission is expressing that very commitment?
I should think so.
I don't think so at all.
I think so. I think the Electoral Commission is doing that, but it's just that if you've read through some of the statements that they've issued out, they keep saying that if we get the funding, we'll be able to do all these things. And most of the time, that's the problem. It's always the funding. When it gets to election, you always hear the Electoral Commissioner coming. There is when the money comes, and the money sometimes comes late. You know, and if we really want to enjoy the peace...
Is that what characterized the last election?
Yeah, if we want to enjoy the peace, you see, cutting corners. You see, what actually happened the last time was because we're trying to cut corners. So we took people that were not even qualified to be sitting there. So they didn't even know the difference between a zero and maybe something else. You understand? They couldn't write the letters. So all these things is because of the funding.
So we need to correct them before.
We need to correct them. And government has to make a commitment to make sure that the funding is given to them to be able to do it.
Well, the Electoral Commission, yes. Their commitment and making sure that the right thing is done.
I second Madame's position. Resources is very important. And I think the government ought to be committed in ensuring that most of these payments have to be done in
and on time.
And the commission also has to let you, the parties, in on.
Of course.
Yes.
They need to also let us know. So I think basically it's just all-inclusive kind of thing or collective kind of thing. We should all try as much as possible to play our role very well towards the elections that we do have. Electoral Commission resources, yes, government must do it. But I'm afraid statutory payments as we sit now, still government doing.
No, you're going to mainstream politics.
I'm not. It's terrible. So how are they even getting the money?
We're not discussing mainstream politics.
So they wouldn't even be able to do that work.
Let's discuss. We have 15 more minutes. Let's do 7 minutes for each of the parties, CPP and then MPP. Let's discuss internal party matters.
CPP wants to avoid this discussion.
Okay, so let me start with the MPP.
Okay.
And the race is heating up, and apparently many of you seem to be dreaming that 2016 you will win the elections. Well, if that is the dream, it means that you're jostling for a certain position that's supposed to be vacant. And a lot more people are even exceeding the numbers that the Constitution states. Are you worried as a party member?
I don't know where you premise this dreaming, the context on which you premise it. But I think that indeed if we are just very right to say that yes, 2016, inshallah, will be an opener for us, and it will be a clear road for us.
You now have about how many people picking presidential nomination forms?
Democracy. No problem. Democracy. When you read Article 12 of our party constitution very well, it tells you that yes, as and when we have more than 5 people, we would have to resort to pruning down the number to 5, which will call for a special delegates conference. So no problem. If we have 1,000 people picking, there's going to be a room to see how we prune it down to 5. In any case, because we want to avoid what happened in Legon the last time in 2007 and all that. So I think that yes, whoever is qualified, whoever has the capability, the ability to pick a form, and you think you will meet all the requirements or the criteria that is laid down for you to become the flag bearer, fine for you. Go ahead and do it. And that's fine. It's all involving. That was a good one. We are poised as a party, what I can tell you. We have a chairman who is, of course, very astute, very strong, and knows what he's doing. He's up to the task, and we're working hard to ensure that yes, 2016 is not going to be easy for us. For any party that is going to contest us, CPP, PPP, any party that comes, we in the MPP, very formidable. We're going to appear, and we've started appearing as formidable as ever, and we're going to work towards it. So the flag bearership contest, indeed, is a human institution. When you have this, everybody has wherever he belongs to. All I would have to say is to appeal to the flag bearers or people who have picked their forms, to also appeal or admonish their followers that, look, let's use statements that are decorous. Let's ensure that we do campaigning that is decent, so the party will not be, thrown apart or, torn apart and all that. So that is only all that I can say on this matter. And I think that the MPP is strong than ever to contest the 2016.
Many people picking or aspiring to be president in a political party. And you're coming from the civil, so I'm asking you this. Is that the way to go? Can't we just build consensus and say, well, we just need to have 1 or 2 or 3, or so to speak, because we feel we're in a democracy, and so we give those rights, and the Constitution also permits that, so everybody.
Yeah, you would normally think that's the right thing to do, but you see, you must understand that this is politics. We need the money. The more people that pick the forms, the party also benefits. So it's another way of funding the party. that is how come sometimes you allow for so many people to pick up the forms. Because I'm sure, I think you've banked in so much now, because everyone else is picking up 10,000 Ghana cedis for a form. Even if they don't come back to pay the rest of the 75 Ghana cedis, 1,000 Ghana cedis, the party would have been happy in the bank. So that for me is no problem. The problem comes when there are factions, when factionalism comes within, and then the bad mouthing and all those kinds of things, the infighting, and like he says, people have to do things with decorum. You need to campaign with decorum. You need to be able to tell your followers that, look, this is a family thing, so let's just do it amongst ourselves. Let's go smooth. So I don't think there's any problem. For me, I think it's okay. And I think they've put in mechanisms to be able to kind of like shorten it to about 5.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah. The constitution already.
So that's what their constitution says.
Yeah. So
what does it mean? So if we are 7, 8 people picking,
they'll have
even if you are 6,
you do what?
There should be
there'll be a mini Congress.
We have a special electoral college comprising, I think, the parliamentarians and other people. Some delegates. So basically, we have about 700.
And they also do their own mini election. That's a choice.
To prune down the number.
To prune down the number to 5.
Yes.
So if you are dropped, you are dropped.
If you are dropped, you are dropped.
Yes.
But having so many people, before even we get to the stage of evoking the aspects of the constitution, of constituting an electoral college to prune down the number to 5, and the resultant effect of having everybody on radio and talking about everybody's business, how does it affect the internal politics within parties?
No, it's really bad. But I think the last time it took National Council to adopt a document, which is the rules and regulations of that will conduct, that will regulate the flag bearership election and all that. So I believe that there in that document, a whole lot of modalities have been put in place for us to look at. And then if we go by that document, what is happening on radio will be actually...
And there's always a talk about groups coming forward.
Yeah, and those groups have actually been, we are supposed by the
recent one, we had 10 chairmen. And we hear the 10 chairmen represent your regions, right? The regions we have. Your regional chairman.
Regional chairman.
And they are forcing the party to call for an early Congress.
Well, we will not be charitable to them if we say they are forcing their party. You know, it's a party of human beings. It's a party of views and all that. Now, if the regional chairman thinks that in their wisdom they have their view and they want to express their
But we have laid down procedures in the party.
Absolutely, that is I will come to that. However, I would have thought that, yes, we have laid down procedures. You are all members of NEC. You are all members of National Council, as it were. You have a better platform to advance your argument. I would have thought that when we get there, yes, we would have pushed it forward to do that. But not to, as it were, come the full glare. But we just wait and pray.
For example, the two of you make very good parliamentarians. You, for example, I really like you.
Thank you.
But in your party, you're also having some disagreements. How do you make sure, as CPP, you form the best body you can to make sure you make an impact in the 2016 elections? Especially looking at the perceived difficulties you, the politicians, seem to think Ghana is going through.
Well, for us in the CPP, we've noticed that we need to be able to bring together all the splinter groups of the Nkrumahist family, and that's what we're doing now, trying to get the PNC and the GCPP to come up and join us, because we believe that unity will bring us more benefits. So for us, we're just trying to get people to understand that even though we might be looking like the small party that we are, we have a lot of goodwill in this country. It's just that the situation in the country has made people to look at money instead of, shall I say, good governance or competence. So people would go out there looking for the money instead of the competence. And that is actually affecting smaller parties because we don't have the money to give around. It takes so much money to run a party in this country. 69 was not like that. 69, when political parties were formed, my father formed one. It wasn't that way. I mean, you didn't need that much money, and people gave, and people understood that the issues were what were to be looked at. How are you going to solve our issues? How are you going to solve our problems? What are you bringing on board and all that? But today, it's all a question of money. If you can get roofing sheets and you can get bentware and cement bags and bentware and things, and we can't even afford to do that because we need the money to open offices, we need the money to, run issues. And
ultimately affects the party, right?
It affects the party. It does affect the party. So we are hoping that Ghanaians will look at us and see that a duopoly type of governance is not good for this country, and that we need a third force. And you look around, I keep saying, look at England. The Liberal Party, no one thought that the Liberals would go to bed with the Conservatives.
Okay, so now you're Lib Dems.
No, I'm only saying.
Okay, so you and MPP.
No. Yeah. Well, we've done it before.
Yes.
Oh yeah, we supported Kufua, the Great Alliance.
Yeah.
Yes, we've done it before.
You were not too happy thereafter, though.
No,
we don't want to go into.
No, we don't want to. But I think the Liberals are happy anyway now that they are in bed with the Conservatives, because whatever happens, you always think of the immediate stuff, and then you forget the long term.
Yeah, it's the people. It's about how you can also contribute.
That's
to
it, because the whole thing is about the people.
Okay. I'm very happy, and I'm glad that I had the two of you in the studio. It's been a wonderful conversation. I hope to have the pair of you again sometime. We'll continue our discussions. Will any of you be contesting seats in the next one?
I will not, actually. No. Obviously, I am a national officer of the party.
No, and I don't believe
No, I may not.
What about you?
No, I've tried it once. And
you don't want to. Okay, I've had in the studio Rosalind Imoro Ayana, a second vice chairperson of the CPP. Thanks for joining me, Rosalind.
You're welcome.
Fantastic. And Kamal Dean Abdullahi is National Nasara Coordinator of the MPP. And Nasara for the
Nasara simply means victory.
Victory.
Yeah.
Okay. What language is that?
Nasara is in the Gbani is same. In Hausa is same. In Mori it's in so many of the languages from the north.
Okay. He's a national coordinator, and so for the MPP. Thanks for joining me, and we hope to have you again sometime. We're taking a break.